The way of a specialist means you are professionally capable and really in-depth professionally capable in a single professional domain. So let's say you're either a videographer, you're a singer, you're an accountant, or you're a lawyer, whatever your professional area might be, you are trying to be the best in that domain, and therefore you learn everything there is to it. And learning doesn't mean only reading books or through informal or formal methods. You're actually practicing and excelling your skill set in that specific domain area. So therefore, how do you be a specialist? Now, normally being a specialist means you would incorporate some kind of formal learning method in your in core requirements for your profession. So let's say you want to be a doctor. As you've seen in some of our prior videos, a formal learning method means you have a college degree or you go through some kind of a structured learning curriculum that gives you a foundation, a strong foundational knowledge in that area. Now, above and beyond that, you might have to get sub-specializations within that area. You might have to continuously update yourself, and depending on what your domain is, you might choose to go for more formal learning methods or informal learning methods like watching YouTube videos or doing your own self-study by going to a library, buying books of relevant to your area, and then keeping track of what's new in the industry. Now, there are some pros and cons of being a specialist. The biggest benefit of being a specialist, it gives you focus. You have one single area that you need to excel on. So whatever knowledge and content there is, your path is really clear because you have a focus on what is it that you want to learn and excel on. The second benefit is that if you're really good at that professional domain, and you excel at it, then there's nobody to beat you on it. You are of high demand, of high value as being the expert in that domain, and therefore, depending on the region or location that you're in, you might be very, very successful because of the depth and knowledge. And anybody with a subpar knowledge or expertise in that area might pale in comparison to what you are capable of. Let's now talk about some of the cons or risks associated with being a specialist. So if you are a specialist, one of the biggest risks is that if you didn't choose the domain carefully and you're not really excelling at it, then your probability of succeeding or leveraging that what you've learned might be questionable. So even though the learning experience itself might be great, how much you can turn that into income or being really successful might if you're not naturally talented at it, it might not benefit you as much. The second biggest risk is risk that the professional domain you have chosen might actually be disrupted or become obsolete over time. And this has happened in a couple of industries of, let's say there's a technology revolution or the society's demand for that goes down. And then what happens is your value diminishes because of that shift or disruption in the industry. So therefore, you have to be very careful when you choose that whatever you're learning will definitely stand the test of time, at least to a foreseeable future, so that you don't become obsolete and become and all the effort that you have put in learning that professional domain does not go into waste. Now, the last risk associated with being a specialist is the amount of effort you are spending time in excelling one area. You're actually doubling down on spending learning in other areas that are possibly needed for life in general. So here are some criteria you can think about if you want to validate yourself in, am I really meant to be a specialist? And here's a checklist that you can use. First thing that you need to see if you want to be a specialist is try to get a sense or a perception of, are you going to be good at it or not? If you feel that you have a natural inclination to succeed in that area and that you think that you'll be able to succeed in that area or excel, be really adept at that professional domain, then that's a cue that's something that you can choose to be a specialist. The second cue of whether being a specialist is right for you or not is if there is value for that professional domain in your location or region. And location is changeable depending on where you are, right? So let's say it's not of value in one area, there might be demand in another area, and depending on whether it's easy for you to get to that place or not, you have to choose whether this is something something that you want to specialize. For example, being a software programmer can be of huge demand in certain countries, and in other countries, it might be something that there's a lot of software programmers, and therefore, unless you have some really differentiating skills and expertise, you might, even if you put a lot of effort and excel in it, you might not be somebody of, you might not be in demand in that region. So that's something to think about. And lastly, also very important, make sure you like what you do. So if you're choosing to be a specialist, you better be sure you love doing it and you feel passionate about it. You don't feel a stress while you're learning it because you're more excited to learn the professional domain that you are passionate about. And that's important because as you go deeper into a subject, depending on the subject, sometimes it gets easier, but most times the more deeper you get, it gets a little bit harder. You might even hit a wall that you need to overcome, and you're only going to persevere if you love doing what you do. So especially if you're being a specialist, make sure you love what you do.